Thank you for visiting List Realty. Today we're going to show you how to fill out a contract to lease. So let's get started. The first line here is the prospective landlord. You can get this information from the property appraiser's office of your local county. For right now, we're going to pretend that the owner's name is John Smith. You can also leave it blank, but please double check it and make sure that it does match the unit as according to the property appraiser's office. You don't want a different name on there and find out that you're making an agreement with a party that is not able or responsible for the lease, has not been approved either through a management company or is not the actual owner. So be very careful. Always double check that with the property appraiser's office. This line is the line for the particular tenant. So today's tenant's name is going to be John Q. Public. And here, this line is when will the lease agreement be prepared? The landlords prepare the lease agreements. We always want this lease agreement to be prepared same day. Even if it takes them an extra day or two, do not put 3 or 4 days because that gives the other side way too much time, and time is of the essence. So we always say that we want the lease done on the same day that we are preparing it. The landlord will create the lease. We do create the leases from time to time. If the agents are busy, sometimes they're out of town, they'll ask us from time to time. If we can prepare it, we're happy to do that. The next line is a deposit. Industry standard is a half a month, so we're going to pretend that this is a $1,500 deal. So we're going to ask the tenant to put down $750, and we're going to put it to our title company. So that's what we do in general. ABC Title is just something I've made up. That's not our actual title company. Sometimes they would like the initial deposit to be retained with the management company or with the landlord's leasing company, with the other side's realty company. So, but in general, we write it like this when we're making the offer. If they give us different instructions, we'll be happy to follow them. We try not to get the $750 or the deposit when we're writing the offer. We do not do that. There's a couple different schools of thought. A lot of people want to grab the money from the clients right when they're writing up the offer. I find that that tends to make the tenants nervous. They don't know you. They probably met you for the first time, and they just feel uncomfortable. It's better to write upon acceptance. What this means is that when the offer is fully executed and accepted, then we will move to the deposit and get that deposit and then show either an escrow letter or give it to the other side, what have you. So we always do the contract to lease first, then we get the deposit, then we do the lease, then we do any association paperwork. For the case of this particular contract to lease, we are going to pretend that this is a condo with an association. So again, we industry standard $750. We can change this. We can collect the full $1,500 if the other side asks us to do that. But in general, a half a month is what you would put here. This area next is the property address. Here you will make sure that you put in the exact address with the full zip code, city, and unit number. Okay, so 123 Main Street, Hollywood, Florida, 33021, unit 123. Please make sure you get that complete and don't leave out unit number or zip code is often something that is left out. So the next step is the property furnished or unfurnished? So for this particular one, we're going to say that it is unfurnished. The next step is the property will be used for only residential purposes and occupied by only tenant and the following persons. So if there's someone over 18 that will be required to apply to the association, but they do not want to be required to pay the rent, so they don't want to be liable for the lease, so they are going to go here. So you would say one adult, and let's say they have two children, you can put two children here. You can also give the names of the people, but this is just an overview so they see basically how many people are going to be living there. The lease term, when is the lease going to start? We're going to say that the lease is going to start on March 2017. Always remember that the lease ends the prior day on the following year. Something that a common mistake is you put 2017 here. So make sure you put the following year. Now this is February. I don't know if there's an extra day next year, but you get the gist of it. So the next line is line 5. That's a total money due before occupancy. That's the total amount due to move in. So we are going to say that the rent is $1,500 times 3, first, last, and security, and that there's a $500 pet fee. So here we're going to put in $5,000 for the sake of this training module. The first month's rent is going to be $500, and we're going to say that that is due on the date of move-in. The last month's rent is going to be $1,500, and that's going to be due on the date of move-in. The security deposit is $1,500, and that's going to be due on the date of move-in. And there's going to be a pet deposit of $500. Again, that is going to be on the date of move-in. So now, if there is an additional month, this is sometimes confuses people. Advance rent does not mean last month. That is an additional month. Let's say they're asking for 4 months down because there's bad credit or for whatever reason. This is where you would put for the month of April, for instance, or for the month of January 2018. This is where you would put that amount, and you would put it here. If there's an association deposit, which we'll talk about later in this training, you would put that here. A lot of associations are asking for an additional deposit from the tenant to cover any common area type of situations where if there's any damage or whatever, it'll take it out of the deposit. Somebody runs through a gate or hits the wall with their car or what have you. Okay, and that would go there. Any other deposits, miscellaneous things would go here. So now in this section, paragraph 2, deposit will be credited as follows. This is paragraph 2's deposit right here, and that will be credited as follows. It always goes to the first month's rent. That $750 will go towards first month's rent. So on the day of move-in, they will owe $4,250, which is $5,000 minus $750, because they will have already paid that by move-in date. And it will be credited to the first month. Very important. Rent payments, taxes, and charges. The total rent for the lease term, which is the 12 months, is $15,000 times 12, which is $18,000. I'm sorry, $1,500 times 12, which is $18,000. Tenant will also pay taxes on the rent when applicable. Taxes are usually zero. The tenant will pay a total rent and applicable as follows in full. Normally we're not paying it in full, but there are some situations where somebody does pay it in full. That's where that will go. So in general, you'll use monthly on the day of, which is the first day, and each month the total will be put in this section right here. Okay, pets in this instance are going to be permitted. In this instance, we are going to say that yes, they have a pet, and it's going to be a cat, for instance. Okay, so we are always going to put what it says on the MLS. So in this instance, it's going to say yes minus 20. That means that on the MLS, they're saying yes, pets are allowed under 20, and we're just going to put cat for right now. In the event that there is no pet, you would still say yes, permitted, so that they know, and then you can put in parentheses, no, tenant has no pets, or tenant currently has no pets, so they know, currently has no pets. Something along those lines, okay? So right now, we're just going to put cat. When you say currently has no pets, that is telling them that they don't necessarily have a pet, but we know that they can have a pet. And sometimes you might put in there with landlord's permission, or must ask landlord, or something like that. You can add if you like. So pets are permitted. Yes, cat under 20 pounds. Smoking is always prohibited. Smoking is always prohibited. So the next area is utilities. So in condos, which this is going to be water is always included. So generally water and trash are included. And we're just going to say that cable on this one is also included. No, this line is tenant will pay for all utilities during the lease of the term, connection charges, deposits for utilities, except for. So if it's a single family, there's generally nothing that is paid for by the landlord. Some duplexes, they might pay water or something like that. Condos, always water is included in the master policy. There's no way to get meters up on each condo, so there's always one master policy, a water bill on the condo. So the next area is the maintenance. So we put here repairs under $100. What this means is the landlord will take care of everything except for repairs under $100. They don't want to come out and change a light bulb or fix a little handle that's fallen off that could easily be screwed back on by a tenant. Use your common sense. Let the tenants know to use their common sense. If the toilet gets stopped up and they got to call a plumber, it's $75. They have to do it themselves. But the air conditioner, the stove breaks, the refrigerator breaks, contact the landlord because it's probably going to be over $100. Association approval is section 11, where applicable the lease is contingent upon the condominium, cooperative, or homeowners association approval. Tenant will pay the non-refundable application fee. Generally, it's $100 per applicant or per married couple. But always check the MLS. Sometimes they're different, and also call the association if necessary, so you can advise the tenant if it's something different. It's very important to be calling the associations to find out if there is any additional deposits. A lot of associations want an additional month deposit. Very important that you know this to let your tenant advise your tenant that maybe they're going to need to put 4 months. A lot of the associations, the landlords would have already put up the month because they know that the tenants can't really afford the 4 months, so you'll see a lot of that. You'll check that with the listing agent. Sometimes the landlord might say, go ahead and put the 1 month up yourself and I will discount last month. You won't have to pay that, so you'll pay first security to the landlord and 1 month to the association. So there's various situations like that. You'll always want to know if there's a minimum credit criteria at the association. Let's say all applicants have to have a minimum of 650 credit. You'll want to know that when you're applying. You don't want to get 3 weeks down the road and find out they didn't make it because their credit didn't suffice, and you should have known that from the get-go. So here you're going to put approval by. Always put 3 to 5 days after the lease is supposed to be prepared. So in general, rule of thumb, I use 5 days from the day I write this. So we wrote it for pretending it's 2/15. So here it'll be 2/20/2017 will be the date that the association approval application needs to be turned in. So basically you do the contract to lease, everybody signs it, then you get the deposit, get the escrow letter, then show the other side that they have the deposit, we have the deposit, or give it to them, whatever, and then they'll prepare the lease. Once the lease is done, then you'll get the association paperwork, have the client fill out the association paperwork, and get that turned in. A lot of times, most times, I will actually turn it in for the tenant. It's a little extra work, but it goes a long way. The associations tend to rub the tenants the wrong way, so with my experience, I know how to deal with them. I look over the package that they send me, many times there's several items missing, so it's good to go ahead and do that prior and make a perfect package and then hand it in ourselves. Nothing is worse than a tenant thinking they filled everything out, getting to the association, handing it in, leaving work and doing that, and then the association saying, sorry, I can't take that because this little line item is missing, or you forgot to get a notary on this, or what have you. The tenant's going to be very upset. They're going to be calling you. Avoid all of that by getting the association application package to yourself, review it, correct anything, and hand it in yourself with their deposit. Okay, so that's the association line. It's important to ask if there's any, again, any extra security deposit, if there's any minimum credit criteria, if there's any move-in, move-out fee, if there's any elevator fee or any other fees that are associated with a tenant moving in. You'll be surprised. They'll say $75 for a key, $25 for a parking permit. They might say it's $100 for the elevator fee. You can find out if that's something that they're going to cash or they're just going to hold on to it. A lot of times the elevator fee, they hold on to it and give the check right back. Okay, so you'll want to know all of that stuff in advance so that your client doesn't get surprised. Number 12 is additional terms. This is where you'd write landlord to steam clean carpets, for instance, or landlord, always specify, so it'd be landlord to repair closet door. Okay. This is also the place where if you would like to make a deal, let's say your client doesn't have 3 months down, they only have 2 months, but you're suggesting to them to spread out the third month over a course of a few months, you would say tenant to pay last month rent in 3 equal payments beginning in month 2, for instance. That's the line 12 is additional terms. This is where you would put this information. Okay, background credit and reference check. If landlord determines that the tenant's background credit and reference check is not acceptable, landlord may terminate this contract by refunding the deposit to the tenant. Thereupon, parties will be released from all obligations. In general, we do an application of our own online at our website. We pull credit, background, rental history, work history. We get the pay stubs and driver's license and put a beautiful package together. So in general, the landlords will be looking at this prior to any deposits being made, because we are looking for the contract at least to be signed and fully executed before there's a deposit. Okay. Also, on a side note, as far as association approval, again, tenant, if they don't get approved, they will get their money back. So for whatever reason, if the association doesn't approve them, there are some instances where someone might lie to the association. The landlords don't like that, and then they might dispute it. But in general, if the association does deny them, they can back out of the deal and get their money back. Failure to perform. If the tenant fails to perform any of the promises of this contract, a deposit will be paid by tenant, may be retained by or for the account of the landlord as agreed upon liquid damages. So basically what this is saying is, let's say they put the deposit down and they never go and apply at the association. They change their mind, they can lose that deposit. So they have to go through with what they need to do. Let's say they were approved by the association, but they changed their mind, decided not to move in, they're going to, chances are they will lose their deposit. And this is a, if the landlord fails to perform, this contract is legally binding. They have to give back the money, and they don't waive any action for damages, which very rarely will a tenant go after a landlord. They just want their money back. So in case the landlord decides at the last minute to rent to somebody else for some reason. The contract is not a lease. Once the parties enter into a lease, the lease provisions that conflict with these provisions of the contract will control. So if anything's changed on any of these terms and is on the lease will supersede this contract. It will have preference over this contract. This is intended to be a legally binding contract. A lot of realtors think that this is not a legally binding contract. It absolutely is. That's why Section 14 is very clear there, that if they don't perform according to this document, they will or can lose their deposit. And if this is not fully understood, seek the advice of an attorney before signing. Please have the tenant sign and date, give their address and their email, and the same with the landlord, okay? And please have them initial on the top page right here where the tenants are supposed to sign. Each of these is for one tenant. This is not first initial, second, last name's initial. This is one tenant, and this is the second tenant. Okay, so thank you so much for going through this training module. If you have any questions, you can email info@List Realty or call us at 954-924-5454.